Hello, thank you so much for joining me for episode 5 of Back to Life, the podcast where we talk about healing and creativity. My name's Milly, I'm a DJ and broadcaster, and in this podcast I talk with other artists, musicians and all types of other creators about what it is to come back from difficulties, things like mental illness, addiction, trauma, and the role of creativity in their path to healing. As someone in recovery myself, I can attest to how powerful it is when we share our stories honestly. These are vulnerable, sometimes very sensitive and often difficult conversations, but also filled with humour, lightness and plenty of hope from some really inspirational people and gone on to live meaningful lives fired up by a sense of purpose and passion. Today's guest is DJ and Artist Recovery Club facilitator and founder Ruby Savage. Ruby is an absolutely incredible DJ and has had a pretty exciting career in music, from working behind the counter at Honest Jons to being the label manager at Gilles Peterson's Brownswood record label. During lockdown, she started a new project. She founded the Artist Recovery Club, which is a 12-week course, initially online, where people come together and work through the book The Artist's Way, which was written by Julia Cameron. But this is with Ruby's own unique spin on it. If you've not heard of the book The Artist's Way, then don't worry, we'll explain everything. But basically it's a book about how to heal your creative blocks and free yourself from the self-defeating beliefs that stop us from creating. I'm so excited to share this podcast with you. I've wanted to dive into this topic forever. So as you'd expect, our conversation is all about the nature of healing and creativity, but also spirituality, the importance of play, overcoming your inner critic, and adult ADHD. Okay, let's roll the podcast. Ruby, hello. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm really excited to speak to you. I'm really looking forward to this chat because we're going to be covering some things that I've been fascinated by for a while, like The Artist's Way and the work you're doing around that now. But last time we spoke, you were about to do your first gig and it was no small thing. You were reopening Phonox with Jayda G, no less. How was that experience?
I mean, it was everything I dreamed it would be and more, but also with a constant sort of underlying slight panic and fear of like, oh, are we doing this? But no, as soon as we got in the booth, it was just like riding a bike, really. Just got in there, got into the music. People were just so up for it. The energy was explosive, and yeah, big shout out to Jayda. She always brings it, but I just feel like the whole building got lifted that night. And yeah, for me personally, it was just amazing. I think I definitely like shelved some of my creative juices, or just creative energy, because I was like, I can't access it right now. It's, gonna have to just put that somewhere, and yeah, bringing it back out, dusting it off. It was just, incredible. Enjoyed it so much.
It looked amazing. I mean, I saw some videos on Instagram and it just looked insane. Such a vibe. Yeah. So how did you get into DJing?
I mean, I've always been obsessed with music since I was very young, and I was definitely somebody who was on the dance floor for a very long time, just absolutely loved the dance floor. And I think I was for a very long time sort of a closet DJ. I would dream and fantasize about it, but just never thought I could do that myself. It was a very, male-dominated scene. I grew up in Amsterdam, learned a lot from listening to their music, but I didn't have the confidence to get in the booth myself at that time. It took me a long while to get there myself. And I guess my way in, finally, was through radio. I started doing radio, and I'd worked in music for like over a decade. So I knew a lot of people. And as soon as I started doing radio, it was kind of like a 1 + 1 is 2 for a lot of people around me. They were like, oh, so you play music? I was like, yeah. Why don't you come and warm up here? Or I, played in like hotel lobbies and warm-ups for gigs, and people's parties, birthday parties. And yeah, from there, it just kind of expanded.
You said that DJing wasn't something that you thought that you would go into, or you had to kind of be encouraged by people around you to do it. But did you always feel that you would work in music? Was that something that you knew from an early age?
No, that was another one. I mean, I studied film. I went to the film academy, which is so, if I look back, so funny because literally my whole life was music. I was on the dance floor every weekend. I was collecting music. I was obsessed. I was going out with a promoter who like threw parties and did festivals. All my friends were DJs. And yeah, I just never thought it would be my own career until much later. I moved to London when I was 23, 24, did a master's here and discovered Plastic People. And I think coming to London really opened my eyes to like possibilities. I think there was just a lot more diversity in the music scene than it was compared to in Amsterdam. I felt represented, I felt welcomed, and that kind of encouraged me. And just by like a little cheeky request, like sort of throwing it out there, I ended up getting a job at Honest Jons Records, and that was my first like real work in music. Behind the counter, did some stuff for the label as well, and I think from there it kind of started rolling. But it was more because I was like, I just want to be in a record store all day. That's just what I want to do. But still at that point, it wasn't like I'm going to end up working in music. I like to put my energy to things that I love. And that's always been the drive of my career. It's like, I'll follow the music. I'll follow the projects that inspire me. And I think for DJing, there was a different journey because I was encouraged at certain points. But I needed to heal inside myself and figure out who I was before I could present to the world my creativity through music. That was like what made it a longer journey for me. I had to figure some shit out for myself.
Hard relate to that. So that kind of brings us quite nicely to the Artist Recovery Club, which is how I came across you, because a friend of mine signed up to do your Artist Recovery Club and sent me the link and said, because we'd been talking about The Artist's Way, and I have been obsessed with the book The Artist's Way, which we'll come on to if you haven't heard of it before, for a long time, because I've read bits from it that have just like resonated so deeply, and I'd be like, oh my God, this book, I need to do this book. So yeah, my friend sent me the link to this course you were doing, and I wasn't able to sign up at the time. I just had too much going on. But yeah, and then your name came up a few times, and I was like, oh, let me just see what this lady's doing, and just, yeah, started checking out kind of what you're doing with that club, and then another friend said they were going to do it, and yeah, so just sort of like the universe led me to you, I feel.
Yes.
Yeah, so The Artist's Way, can you kind of describe what The Artist's Way is and how you came across it in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, The Artist's Way is a book written by Julia Cameron. It's kind of got cult status. It was written probably in the 80s and published early 90s. And over the years, I mean, millions have been sold. Most people that I speak to are like, oh yeah, I've got a copy of that. It's on my shelf somewhere. Or I know somebody who's done it. But it's ultimately a 12-week course in creative recovery. And I was given the book 7 years ago after a really bad breakup. And I think at that point I was ready to hold on to anything, and I really needed to find myself. And I guess my uncle saw that and gave my mum the book. So here, give this to Ruby. And I started reading the introduction, some of the concepts. And I mean, the first chapter hit me so hard. It was such a reality check that I had to continue. I think it also really, really encouraged me to continue my DJing, pursuing my DJing. And that's why it's so interesting that I'm now doing the Artist Recovery Club, where I can see the healing that it gave me and how I've grown as a DJ, and being able to then present, what helped me get there to other people. It's kind of like a dream come true, like a real great full circle.
Yeah. So the Artist Recovery Club is where you kind of go through that process, that 12-week course, but with a group of other artists who feel that they're blocked as well, or need some creative recovery.
Yeah. I mean, it's not just artists. It's literally, I would say it's specifically people that feel they've got, something in them that wants to come out. Like, I think everyone is creative. I'm 100% sure of that. It's just whether you want to answer it. Like, do you feel that yearning?
I think that's a really kind of useful distinction, because I guess a lot of people wouldn't even call themselves artists. And so immediately they might think, oh, the artist way, that's not for me. But actually, I just want to read a bit from it to you, the bit that kind of really hit me like in the guts. So it says, so basically, there's a kind of an introduction, and then it talks about week 1, recovering a sense of safety, and it introduces this concept of shadow artists. So artists that are basically kind of living their lives around other artists and art, but not actually kind of practicing themselves. At the time when I read this, which I think is quite a while ago now, like maybe 10, 15 years, I can't even remember where I came across it, but I remember reading this and going, oh my God, that's me. So it says, artists love other artists. Shadow artists are gravitating towards their rightful tribe, yet cannot yet claim their birthright. Very often, audacity, not talent, makes one person an artist and another a shadow artist. Hiding in the shadows, afraid to step out and expose the dream to the light, fearful that it will disintegrate to the touch. And then it goes on and says, shadow artists often choose shadow careers, those close to the desired art, even parallel to it, but not the art itself. That really kind of resonated quite deeply for me when I read it, because I had my whole life been friends with musicians and artists and very creative people, but I hadn't found my thing, and I didn't really know what my thing was, and I didn't even know if I'd dared to ask myself what that thing was. And so I was putting all my energy into other people's projects and helping other people make their visions come alive, but I wasn't putting any of that into myself. So that's what kind of made me think, oh, maybe this is for me. I've never really spoken about myself as an artist before, but I was definitely told I was creative, but I'd kind of lost it along the way.
I mean, I got goosebumps when you just read that out, and because it still resonates with me to this day. And I like to remove the whole artist, am I an artist, am I not an artist element from the process, because I think it's such a huge block for people, including myself. It was a huge block. I could never call myself an artist. I was like, well, I'm not an artist, and there's all these reasons, very much rooted in fear, or even shame, bit of guilt, like, is it selfish to be an artist? All these, ridiculous notions, but they're very real. What I find so beautiful about the course and about the approach through the Artist's Way is that it focuses on finding what gives you joy. So away from like, are you an artist or are you not an artist? It's really just about what makes me happy. And, each week you get the questions, you get the readings, you have to like do some tasks that really dig into like finding your personal passion. And then it just says, go and try and explore. So it's taken off all the labels, right? And I really feel that that's where the healing can then start to come in, and healing of the blocks that stop us. Because I mean, when I read that paragraph about shadow artists, I literally just sat there and I was like, right, literally every single person, including my ex that I just come out of a relationship with, was a DJ. It's always surrounded myself with music heads, and it was like such a huge slap in the face. Like, literally like the light bulb switched on. I was like, oh wait, I want to be a DJ, but still being, still very much having this fear and, this idea that I couldn't do that because of X, Y, Z. But what I think is so great is that actually the exercises in the book move you through those fears. But yeah, by first acknowledging what it is that you actually desire to do for yourself. And now when I I check in on myself, I'm like, ooh, who have I got around me? What's going on? Do I want to do this? And, you don't have to become an artist or a creative. You can just allow yourself to experiment with these things without any of the labels. And I think that's what helped me sort of enter the realm.
Yeah, I really related so much when you said, you were surrounded by DJs and then you had to think, oh, actually, maybe I want to be a DJ. It was like, I actually did, I'd kind of started and stopped like many times in my life, and I knew I'd always wanted to be it, but I'd kind of felt like, the moment had passed. I'd had lots of, struggles with mental health issues and addiction, and life just hadn't kind of thrown up the opportunity really in a way. And I thought, my time has passed and I've missed my opportunity, and it's a shame. I would have liked to have done that if I'd been well enough, but too old now, life's too busy, blah, blah, blah. And I actually was reporting at a course, like a girls' rock. It was a Girls Rock London course, and they basically give them instruments, and you form bands, write songs in a day. So people with no musical experience, all women.
Yeah.
And it was just this incredible environment. I was there. I wasn't even there for the whole course, but I was just there reporting for work, doing a radio report. And every single woman there I spoke to, it was like they were telling my story. They were all like, I've lived my whole life obsessed with music. I've been around music my whole life. I feel this yearning when I see other people living my dreams that I don't have the guts to kind of pursue, or I'm, too wrapped up in fear to even try. And when I heard them all, and they were all there, and they were just like, we're just giving it a go, and there's no expectations. And that was like so transformative for me. And I was like, oh yeah, I actually want to do that too. And I literally went away after that weekend and bought myself just a controller to start with. And from there, I just it was all I wanted to do. And and I've sort of been DJing again since then.
Yes.
And it was exactly that thing of like, yes, oh yeah, you only want to date DJs, you only want to be friends with DJs. Yeah. Maybe you actually just want to be a DJ.
I even carried shame for like being attracted to people that were into music. So I was like, oh, is that all I want to, be around? And I mean, music is my life, I guess, and closest to religion. But yeah, there's so many ways that we block ourselves. And I just want to emphasize something that really, I think, is such a beautiful element that you just highlighted, that you were in a group of women that felt the same. And it's interesting because the first time I did the Artist Way, I just did it myself. You can literally buy the book today, have it tomorrow, and start the course. I had no idea when I started doing it as a club with like a group of people, the impact it would have on the overall experience. It just amplifies the whole course, because you, like you say, it's empowering when you are connected to other people. You feel more heard. There is so many more options for solutions and encouragement and accountability. It's very easy to drop off. You can go into the course going, yeah, I'm going to do this. And it's very easy to sort of, get stuck, or, the voices become really loud again. Like, why are you doing this? And because it does ask you to start loving yourself, ultimately. The course is really just about blocking out time and space to spend on yourself. That is... with no pressure of having to produce something or deliver or present yourself in a certain way. No expectations. It's just for you. And it's just, I think, and that's why it can be so revolutionary and life-changing, because we don't realize how little time we spend on ourselves. And even 15 minutes a day can change everything. And if you can make it an hour a day, you are winning. And yeah, just because ultimately I think that's what stops us from pursuing our dreams and desires and goals, is we literally spend 1 minute saying, oh no, I'm too old. And that's it. Whereas if you spent 15 minutes writing down, well, what would happen if, okay, I'm too old? What happens beyond that? You would soon probably reason yourself out of it again. But again, it's about giving that time. And I think that brings us to the absolute gem of the artist's way, which is the morning pages. And so the course asks you from the very start to every morning wake up and write 3 pages of journaling, just stream of consciousness, anything that comes up. If you don't know what to write, I don't know what to write. Keep writing. And it's this idea that you're spending time with your mind, Marie Kondoing your mind, just getting all the clutter out onto paper. It's gone for the day. But also just tuning into yourself. You sit there and you think, okay, well, what is it that's giving me joy or frustration, anxiety? And writing it down, it brings you back into yourself and connected with yourself. And that is an absolutely life-changing act to do, especially in this world that we live, where we're just scrolling in through other people's lives.
So I did a creative writing course a few years ago, and that was the first at the start of every session would do the stream of consciousness writing. And as someone who also wants to write and has felt very blocked around writing, that blank page, and that expectation that you need to come out with some gem, some you have to write something that's fully formed. Just the freeing nature of just writing absolute drivel for 3 pages, and that's it. That's all you're being asked to do. It can be absolute nonsense, but it also gets you past that kind of blank page paralysis. Just starts things flowing. And I think that, like you say, that's such a sort of revolutionary idea of you can just do stuff and it doesn't have to be anything. It's like the practice rather than the result.
We like to say it's about the process, not perfection. Because I think often we want to create with the guarantee that we're going to have a result that's, ready to be shown to the world. But actually, the joy in creation lies in trying things out and making mistakes and trying again. And once you do that, that's actually how you are building your creative world, I guess.
And so going back to what you were saying about kind of, the healing potential of discovering your passion and discovering your dreams and putting time into yourself and being creative and valuing that. As you were talking about that, I was just thinking that, a lot of, I guess, the kind of mental barriers that I have had to overcome, and I guess other people would probably relate to, is that idea that it's frivolous, that it's self-indulgent, that it's egotistical, that it's unnecessary, that it's an add-on for the privileged, or all these sorts of ideas, really. Why do you think that, connecting with your creativity and creative practice is such a healing thing? And I guess how has it been transformative for you? Big question, sorry.
Well, no, it's amazing. It's a great question. I mean, I have to quote my favorite, Esther Perel.
Love her. Oh my God, love her.
Love her. Yeah, love her. And she speaks about play. And she was saying play is essential to feel alive for various reasons. But it starts with this: play is when you're trying something new, having fun, but it's like a bit out of your comfort zone. Like it's exciting, it's something unusual, and it tickles the senses that you need to feel like that, to feel alive, to feel inspired, to feel hopeful, to feel passion. These are all essential things for living, and they happen through play, through that act, like the act of playing. And relating it back to the artist's way, we treat our inner artist as a child, or as something that needs to be grown. And if you think of a child learning how to walk, and you're the parent, you're watching, trying to get up, stumbling over, trying up, and that happens over and over, and there's constant encouragement to keep trying and playing with with legs and what's around to get up, and that's how we like to approach it. Just see your inner artist as a kid that wants to play, and that is learning, and that is allowed to fall and drop and try again, and it's fun, but it's also a bit scary. Growth is scary. Change is scary. It's the unknown, but it's also what makes us feel alive.
So going back to when you first sort of encountered the program and did the program, what was your life like, and your sort of internal landscape like before you did that, and what was it like after? What was the change that occurred, and how did it transform you?
Ooh, well, I was a complete mess. And it transformed. What happened was it planted seeds. When you said earlier audacity, when you read out the book, that word stood out just loud and clear, and it continues to. I wasn't ready to embody audacity, but the seed was planted. It was there. It was like, I know that I'm a shadow artist. I know I have desires that I'm not answering, and I know that I need to do healing before I probably can do them. But I knew it was possible. Like I felt it was just enough to feel seen, even if it was through the words on the pages of the program, to make me just take the steps. I just started taking myself serious. I think that was the first, and my needs and my desires. I started taking them serious, and over time, I mean, I still, dip into the book, and suddenly something will click that never clicked before. I think it's so dense, and I think we're all different parts of our journey, and some things resonate at certain times in your life. But yeah, for me, the first 6 months that I did it, I think I just started making the sort of little steps towards my dreams and desires, because I'd named them. That was already a revolutionary act for myself, just naming what it was, writing it down. It was real. And then, I mean, it's still a process. I don't think the journey ever ends. And, now I've got a good couple of years to look back and see the growth, and I can see it. Yeah, where I'm at now is that I have found so much more confidence and audacity and care for myself, and have been able to release immense amounts of fear around failing, mainly failing, fear around failing. I still have fear, but it was a heavy load, and now I'm able to switch it, because I know that where the fear comes from, and I can tell myself. I like to call them posi yaffs. It's a part in part of the course is writing your positive affirmations, but I call them posi yaffs or posi AF, and they can be very cringe. Other people's can be very cringe, but they're so vital for yourself. Find what it is that you what you don't believe or can't imagine believe, or what you struggle with. Write it in a positive affirmation and say that shit every day.
That that definitely, again, really resonates very deeply for me. I think I identified, like when I was, like in my 20s, that basically, I had such high expectations for myself that essentially I just didn't do anything. I was absolutely paralyzed because I could only ever fail, because there's no way I could have lived up to these crazy expectations I was setting for myself. And there was no allowing, the journey. You're kind of expecting to be a master the minute you start, and not allowing the years of growth that have to happen before you get to, a point of mastery.
Again, this goes back to this like space for plays, like, and we often don't see that the art we consume or that we experience, going to a gallery, going to a cinema, going to a show, we see it in its absolute ultimate glorious moment, and we don't see literally the blood, sweat and tears and endless hours of practicing and rehearsing and fucking up and trying again and having a problem that there's no solution, finding new solutions. We don't see that. And it's literally, for any artist, it's a long journey with loads of steps that are part of it. And it's just remembering that when you are, interested in any creative form, to start with play and start with enjoying it and building from there, forgetting about what it might be, what it could be, because you know what, all those works that we see, they start with play. The most amazing, and they probably came out of things that have gone wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, it's always been, I'd always almost revel when I hear people do a dodgy mix or something, because I'd be like, oh great, they make mistakes too. And it was it was always that it was the imperfections rather than perfections that kind of gave me permission to continue, basically, and made me think, oh, I could do that too. So I guess now I'm like, that's my excuse for a dodgy mix. It's it's all right if you make mistakes, because actually it's human. We're all human, aren't we? We're not machines. So
in fact, it's the imperfections that make me feel connected. And for me, art creation, it's about connection, not just with self, but also with others, with the universe, or whatever spiritual element there is out there. It's about connection and feeling. And when somebody makes a mistake, it's like, I feel you, I've been there. It's like I can connect with that. Yeah.
And the spiritual element is something I'd like to touch on, actually, because I think that's something that often is a bit alien. I know friends I've spoken to have found that sort of side of it a bit alien. But you were talking earlier about the relationship you have with yourself and that healing that's occurred, that you're basically there for yourself, you're backing yourself and caring for yourself. And that's so beautiful. And I think then the next layer of that is that you're now using that healing to help heal others and to kind of just shine that light in the world, and hence starting the Artist Recovery Club, and what a beautiful kind of journey that is, of going through your own process of healing and then helping others on their process of healing, and how that continues to heal you. I wanted to know kind of how it actually came about, because it came about during the pandemic. Am I right? So can you tell me how that started, and how the idea came to you, and your first your first meeting, because that must have been, starting that kind of that seed of an idea and bringing it to life must have been quite a process and quite an experience.
Definitely. Big experience. So, I mean, ever since I did The Artist's Way, I've been giving this book to friends, anyone who I'm like, you sound a bit blocked. Here you go. And so 2020, I found myself having to reach back to the book and to some of the tools, because I mean, it was just so traumatizing going through 2020, and also not being able to DJ. That was my creative outlet. It was my place of play. It's where I felt alive. And suddenly that was taken away. Like the club was my church, like that was my community, my space. And I was like, I need to find something that I can even just what to do with my energy. And so I found myself just going back to journaling, because I'd definitely fallen off my morning pages, something I've tapped in and out of, but I got back into it, and was just having conversations with friends, and I was like, yeah, I think I wanna do the artist way again. And it feels like a time. It's been it's been 6 years since I'd done it. Dipped in and out. And then I had a couple of other people like, oh yeah, I heard about this book. Because I mean, millions of copies have been sold. Oh yeah, I think my mum's got a copy on the shelf. Or like, I've had the book, I've never done it. And I mean, I was going to do it with a friend, and then I was speaking to another friend about it, and they were like, I want to do it too. And I was like, oh, maybe just join us. And then it was just like, why don't we just have loads of people join? And when I really clicked to make it into a club, I mean, first I was like, let me try it out, just, for fun. And I was like, no, this could be a real thing. And I'm an ideas person to the max. I have 25 great ideas every 10 minutes. It's kind of a roll. I'm going to do this. And I think it's, sorry, it's a little bit of a sidebar, but I figured out that I have ADHD end of last year as well. And that was a whole journey in itself. And I understood why I have loads of ideas, and also been very frustrated most of my life that I could not manage to bring them to life. I'd start, buy the website domain, reach out to a couple people, get on board, and then I'd just be like, oh, I'm bored of it now, like, I'm good, or like, oh, there's another idea, let me get on that. And that's just been very much a cycle in my life. But with this diagnosis, I was able to recognize what was going on. And I think it came exactly at the time when I was birthing the Artist Recovery Club. And I really wanted to try the medication, full disclosure here, getting the juice. And it kind of changed my life, because for the first time I was able to focus on things and stay focused. And this happened exactly at the time when I was, creating Artist Recovery Club. And I mean, I have to say, it wasn't like, oh, that was just the idea right in front of me and I just went with that. It also ticked pretty much everything that I love and what I'm about and what I want to be about. It's about community, about healing. Music is a big part of it. Creativity, arts, connecting, transformation. These things are really, really important to me. And so, yeah, I guess the universe, the South, God, as Julia would say, brought it together, and I was able to focus long enough to get this club off the ground. I mean, yeah, and then I think also what absolutely just, sort of inspired me was the immediate response. Like, I put it up on my stories, like, hey, I'm going to do this, and so many people were like, oh my God, I think I need this. Or were like, I've got the book, never finished it, I have to do this. Or like, I heard about it. And that definitely also just kept me focused. I was like, okay, there is a demand for this. And because I could relate it back to my own journey of being blocked to, working through that, like being a blocked shadow DJ to actually DJing, and then, using the experience that I've had through that in the course just also makes it very sort of now. The book can be a little bit dated. It's like written in the 90s, middle class, white American lady. And no disrespect, Julia Cameron is a don for writing this book. The tools work, it works. But there's just, her references are dated and maybe a little bit, of a specific culture that might not resonate with others. And for me, being a woman of color, I have a different life experience. So I really want to make sure that that flavor is brought into the course. You know, my experiences and how I step into the world, and a new generation. I mean, this book was written before social media existed. I think chapter 13 needs to needs to be written. Just, you know, the artist's way in creative recovery in relationship to social media. So that's things that I add, you know, because I mean, it's probably one of the biggest blocks we come across is, you know,
scrolling,
yeah,
scrolling and comparing.
Scrolling and comparing. I mean, if you know, it's really a miracle any art gets made these days. So yeah, that really got the club off the ground.
Wow. And yeah, and you've touched on it a couple of times that there is a spiritual element to it, and I know that friends of mine who've done it have sort of struggled with that. I mean, I'm in 12-step recovery, which is a spiritual program, and I know that Julia Cameron was also in 12-step recovery, so there's a lot of similarities. And yeah, but how do you kind of get around that with people? Do you find people in the group also struggle with that, or is that something that you struggled with?
Yes, absolutely struggled with. I almost chucked the book when it, you know, at the first mentions of God, and I was like, nah, not for me. But also, I think that was also part of my healing, was my disconnect from spirit. Now, I wouldn't say that necessarily God was the one for me, and I think, you know, and I make it very clear in the club, like, it's a personal choice, God, your relationship to spirituality, and for the course to work, you don't actually have to believe in God or any of it. We just ask you to do the exercises and stick to the program, and it will work just as much. But for me personally, what I found is that I don't know, maybe I'm still figuring out. I love I was raised pretty much atheist, but I'm so loving my personal journey with spirituality at the moment, because there is just some things, I feel it in the dance, I feel it in music, I feel it in art, I feel it in connection to other people, you know, in the most cliche and straightforward way. If anything, God is love, an energy, something we cannot see, feel, touch, but so deeply feel and see, and you know, for me it comes down to like being open. You know, we live in like such a polarized world. If anything, you don't have to believe in any of it, but like having the openness and the respect that others might, and this goes two ways, is for me where the essence lies. It's like it's a personal choice, and you have your own relationship. This is where I'm at with spirituality. I have my own relationship with it, and I feel everybody should have their own. If anything, how, you know, it's this idea that we live in a responsive universe. We're all made of atoms, we're bobbing around, and we can be intentional with where we bob, I guess. And that's really what the artist way does, and that's where the quote unquote spirituality lies.
And I think, yeah, I mean, I kind of work with people, taking people through the 12 steps, and often people have, you know, and myself included, I was really not convinced, and didn't think I wanted to or could believe in God or a higher power. But when it was put to me in very simple terms of just thinking of the word, when the word God comes up, changing it to good, and then I could sort of think of good energy. I could certainly identify that there was like times in my life when I'd been driven by good energy and good things had happened, and I had met good people and done good things. And there were times in my life where I'd been driven by dark energy and done dark things and been drawn to dark situations. And so I was just trying to channel into the good rather than the dark, and kind of like a really simple way. And I felt like that for me was the seed from which it grew. And now, yeah, I'm very much into I'm also very much on a spiritual path, and very much into kind of consciousness and awareness, and just tapping into that heart space, and that feeling of connection to self and others and the world around you. I think, we do become so sort of disconnected. I became so very disconnected from myself and anything around me. And that was a very dark place to be. And actually kind of getting back to connection with self and others, that feels like for me where a sort of a creative energy lives. It's like you say, it doesn't come from the head and from thinking. It comes from the heart and from feeling.
Yeah, and I think that's also then the magic in the art is that connection that is made that you cannot explain, you cannot sometimes even put words to, and it's why we're drawn to art, as humans, because it's connection. And bringing it all the way back to like the start of all this, the connection with yourself is so important. It's above anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And the tagline of your Artist Recovery Club is that a colonized mind cannot create. Can you talk to me about that?
Yes.
It's such a great concept.
I mean, it kind of says it all. A colonized mind cannot create. It's acknowledging that we're hit by trauma and it lives in our mind. And so, whether we're colonized by the concepts and ideas or thoughts while we're raised by the people around you that raised you, from society, jobs, friends, it's all clutter that sits in our mind and colonizes our own being. And when we don't free ourselves from that, when we're stuck in it, that's what blocks us. So it's a call to action. A colonized mind cannot create. It's like free yourself. I used the word colonize because it's a force that sometimes has to be fought, but it is the way to get to creating. And I know that the simple act of paying attention to yourself, to your own mind, your own thoughts, your own ideas, and that's again back to the morning pages, that's where they all come out, is revolutionary. And I think we live in a time that calls for revolutionary thinking and being.
Ruby, what an absolute legend. So happy she could join me on the podcast. She's definitely inspired me to keep up my morning pages, which I do sporadically at best, I'd say. And I'm also definitely so keen to sign up for the course myself at some point. If you want to find out more about Ruby, you can follow her on Instagram at Ruby Sound. And there you should be able to find out more about the next Artist Recovery Club, when that's happening. And I believe it's the next one is starting in September. So hurry up and get on it if you're interested. No time like the present. Why not grab that inspiration you're feeling right now and do something really amazing that's bound to change your life. If you've enjoyed this episode or any other episodes in the podcast and want to support me to continue making them, then there is actually something you can do. So first of all, tell your mates, share it in your stories and your WhatsApp groups, send it to people you think would appreciate it. And you can also follow the podcast on Spotify or Apple or wherever you're listening. And on Apple, if you want absolute bonus points, you could write a little review saying that you've enjoyed it. It really does make a difference. And I appreciate every single one of you who's listened, got in touch so far. Big, big thank you. Really, really sending love to you. All right then, looking forward to seeing you next time. Till then, take care. Bye.